Alright, so here's the deal.
As you probably know, I have a thing for bad movies. I just think they are fun and entertaining. In the sanity testing kind of way. For example, my guilty pleasure movie is the first Fred movie. It's a pile of shit, but it makes me laugh. Hell, I have 2 movie reviews on this channel, and both of those movies are worse than having skin cancer.
Yeah, that was actually a part of a video series that I stopped doing called The Bestest Movies, which was me talking about exclusively bad movies. And this is technically a movie review, so it's kind of the same thing. F it. I'm gonna put it on the playlist and roll the intro to make it official. The little ditty I put in the beginning of it. Roll the intro.
So yeah, seeing as how I kind of have a thing for really bad movies, it was only a matter of time before 3 specific movies were going to be a topic of conversation with me. Especially considering that they are largely considered to be some of the worst movies ever created. They have abysmal Rotten Tomato scores. Both of my favorite all-time movie critics, Jeremy Jahns and Chris Stuckman, both lambasted all 3 movies in this franchise, and I just had to watch these movies to see for myself if they lived up to the hype.
50 Shades of Grey. Well, 50 Shades of Grey, 50 Shades Darker, and 50 Shades Freed. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about those movies because I had the privilege of watching all 3 of them over the past couple days. Because apparently I hate myself. But that does beg the question of my opinion on these movies. In my opinion, are these the 3 worst movies ever made? No. Does that mean I think that they're good? Absolutely not. They're quite terrible. They are really, really, really bad. I've seen far worse, but I've seen infinitely better. Like, for example, Battlefield Earth with John Travolta is a far, far worse movie than the 50 Shades movies. The Room, as much as I enjoy it, ironically, is a worse made movie. The 2 movies I've reviewed on this channel, the Emoji Movie and the Bye Bye Man, in my opinion, they are worse than the 50 Shades movies. But the 50 Shades movies are still pretty bad, and kind of very indicative of the collapse of our culture. Especially the second one, 50 Shades Darker. That one is next level bad, but still not quite as bad as some of the worst movies ever made. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into my more detailed opinions on these movies. Oh, I kind of knocked some stuff onto something that my fiance made in my hysteria. My fiance made this in her ceramics class, and she made a bong.
But one real quick house cleaning thing I want to address. Every reviewer of these movies or the books they are based on inevitably bring up the fact that they are based on Twilight fanfiction. As painfully obvious and hilarious as that is, I won't be bringing it up very often, as I feel it's something that everyone else has already mercilessly and justifiably mocked repeatedly.
I'll just say this. This will be my one observation. If you were to tell me that a 47-year-old woman who was still painfully in the throes of her 13-year-old emo phase wrote a Twilight fanfiction that became a novel, that became a movie, and then you showed me this picture and said, that's her, yeah, to say I'm not at all surprised would be the understatement of the millennium. Just saying. And also, no, I have not read the novels. And also, no, I will not read the novels. Not now, not ever. Because A, I like my life, and B, I'm not a 40-something-year-old divorced single mom.
Alright, so movie 1, 50 Shades of Grey.
The most controversial movie ever made!
Which is an absolute bold-faced lie. The most risque thing in the entire movie, or any of the 3 movies for that matter, is you get to see Dakota Johnson's nipples. And a single frame of Christian Grey's shaft. Kind of. But I guess I'll start with the positives in this movie before I tear this movie a new submissive orifice to shove anal beads into while hunched over looking for my lucky Dragon Ball gags and going over how my safe word is Captain Crunch. Why did I write that? So yeah, positives. The leads are attractive. Especially Jamie Dornan.
He's so hot!
And the directing and the cinematography is pretty good. Honestly, this is a well-shot, beautiful-looking movie, and shit, that's all the positives that come to mind. Okay, I'll go ahead and touch on what I mentioned earlier. This movie is not even remotely sexy, unless you are into 2 attractive people awkwardly grinding on each other in a couple scenes.
Are you into this? Huh? Because this is basically what you get in the movie. It's just as hot as this. Are you not entertained?
Seriously, I feel bad for the actors. They look so uncomfortable throughout all 3 films, and look like they genuinely despise each other during interviews. And again, this is supposed to be a raunchy, forbidden fruit-ass movie that your parents will forbid you from seeing, when all you get in the movie is missionary.
Missionary position every single night.
I agree, Roman. And again, same can be said for the entire trilogy. Outside of constant missionary, we get implied doggy once in movie 2.
Wow, that's so hot.
And the BDSM stuff isn't even that intense. He uses the most basic shit that you can find at a Home Depot or behind a Home Depot in Lancaster, South Carolina. This is the most softcore porn ever that, again, is more awkward and weird than hot or kinky. I mean, the climax...
Climax.
Is when Anastasia asks Christian to show her the worst thing he can do, and he spanks her 6 times. Seriously, that's it? I've been spanked way harder.
Isn't that right, Dad?
All of this is basic and tame as so in my opinion it's very misleading. You want some freaky shit? Watch hentai or Google Goku X Anne Frank. Yes, that is real and I hate the world we live in. Another problem I have, these characters. These characters are so unlikable. Anastasia Steele, which is the most groan-inducing, eye-rolling name ever, is a complete and total moron and a terrible protagonist.
Just about every time another character walks near her, it startles her. Like, she gets startled over and over and over, not just in this movie, but the entire trilogy. If you took a shot every single time she went, huh, 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 you would be trash. You'd die of alcohol poisoning.
Surprise!
Although I will say, she's not at her worst in this movie. The next 2 movies, she's somehow infinitely dumber, but still. And then we have Christian Grey, who would have been the antagonist if this dog shit was written by a sane human being. For the love of God, this is the most hateable jackass I have ever seen on a screen. He's abusive psychologically and physically. He's insanely creepy and stalks Anna constantly and has 0 personality outside of, "Hi, I'm rich, handsome, and into beating women who look like my mom because it makes me ejaculate through my $84 billion pants." Christian Grey is a red flag with arms, legs, and mommy issues. He shows 0 emotion, doesn't even look horny when he's supposed to be horny, and after they meet once, he stalks her not only across Vancouver, Washington, but across the damn country when Anna has the audacity to visit her mom in Georgia. When Anna passes out at a party because she got too drunk, he takes her unconscious body to his place instead of hers, which is so rapey it hurts. And his immediate response to her being a virgin is, "Let me fix that, because we can't have no virgins around these parts, so let me go around these parts, yeehaw!" Yeah, Christian Grey sucks and should probably die alone.
It genuinely baffles me that anyone could be into Christian Grey. In the movies or in the books, because from what I've seen from the movies, all three of them, he treats her terribly. All the time. He's horrendous. Other than him being hot and rich, there's nothing to him. I don't get it. People who like these movies out there, if you watch this video, like, comment, subscribe, what is the appeal? Do you like being abused? It makes no sense.
And honestly, part of what makes these two characters, or two primary characters that we're supposed to care about their relationship, it's the foundation of these three god-awful movies, and they just don't click. They have zero chemistry. Part of what makes them so terrible is the dialogue. The dialogue in this movie is so laugh-out-loud, hysterically bad. Honestly, just listen to some of these lines.
Two things. First, I don't make love. I hard.
Do you now? Who finds this sexy?
What are butt plugs?
It's a plug that goes in your butt. See what I mean? She's so dumb. She's incapable of using it. What do you think it is? Use context clues.
Because I'm 50 Shades of up.
Who wrote this shit? Oh, right. This person.
But outside of the god-awful dialogue and their toxic as hell relationship, seriously, treat your partners with respect, please. Don't be like Christian Grey. Just no. Gross. Ew. No thanks. Outside of the wooden acting, the bad dialogue, the hilariously cringe-inducing sex scenes, if you can even call them that, my biggest problem with this movie is it's so damn boring. This is the most boring movie I have ever watched. When these two aren't delivering terribly written dialogue or awkwardly humping each other, they're doing nothing. Nothing happens in this movie. They do mundane couple shit. It's like if someone put on a random Hallmark movie and put it at half speed. That's this movie. And if it wasn't bad enough that this movie was just insanely boring, this wasn't the biggest snooze fest of all time, on top of that, this boring-ass plot constantly recycles itself. They do the same things over and over and over again. Like, these two attractive people, they meet, they talk, they kind of like each other, they hit it off, and then they go their separate ways. And they bump into each other. They talk. They kind of like each other. They go their separate ways. They bump into each other again. They talk. This time they have sex, though. Then they go their separate ways. Then they bump into each other again. They talk. They kind of like each other. They have sex. They go their separate... It's over and over and over again for 2 hours. That's this movie. The worst thing, though, was at a point to impress her, he shows her his helicopter and takes her on a helicopter ride. Goes, oh, he's so rich and hot and he has a helicopter. I'm so wet. And then later on, he does it again. He shows her an airplane and they go for an airplane ride. I'm just like, they literally recycled the rich guy showing her how rich he is shtick. Like, here's my big expensive thing. I'm gonna let you ride in my big expensive thing. Later on in the movie, he does it again. This plot recycles itself over and over. Why?
This movie does have a positive ending, though, a very encouraging ending, where after he does the forbidden act of spanking her 6 times, double thrice, she dumps his sorry ass. Seriously, she breaks hold of him and dumps him and leaves. That's great. If this was written by a sane, normal, rational human being, the message would be, relationships like this are bad. Break away from those people. That would have been great. That would have been wonderful. It's even bookended. Like, when they first meet, they have the shot of the elevator opening, and their first meeting, they're like, Christian, Anna. And that's how the movie ends. It's actually a good bookended ending. If only they would have kept that, and they didn't make 2 more god-awful movies after this. But at least for this movie, the ending is okay, and it has a positive message that's ruined with the sequels. But as far as the first movie, 50 Shades of Grey, Again, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's so dull, it's so boring. The plot is just, it recycles itself to a nauseating degree. It's not sexy at all. The characters are atrocious. No one is likable. It's hilarious at some points, some of the lines and some of the line delivery. It's just, again, not the worst thing ever, but not the best thing ever. So I do not recommend watching 50 Shades of Grey unless you have severe insomnia problems. But now we move on to the second movie, 50 Shades Darker. I'm having PTSD.
50 Shades Darker, the second of the trilogy. God, where do I even begin? As for positives, there are a couple. Again, it's a well-lit, well-shot movie, and there are actually things that happen in this movie. It's not as boring as the first, which is a plus. There's a creepy girl named Layla who is stalking Anna because she is a jealous former girlfriend of Christian, and there is a whole subplot about Anna's boss who tries to sexually assault her. Lovely.
Granted, these two subplots are not the most well done, well thought out things that have ever been put into a movie. They honestly are kind of random and just kind of happen haphazardly. It's not well executed, but at least things on the screen are moving. At least there's some kind of movement at all, where in the first movie it was just nothing. It was them having sex, or them talking, or them just going out on dates. At least things actually happen in this movie. Not good things, not well done things, but things. I would rather have things than no things, if that makes any sense. And I will also say that as a whole, this movie is easily the worst of the trilogy. It's so bad. But the first 3/4 of it are actually not that terrible. The first 3/4 are actually better than the first movie. The last fourth, which I will touch on later, just completely sinks the entire thing. But for the first hour or so, it's actually quite better than the first movie.
Now let's delve into my problems with this movie, of which I have plenty. Firstly, Anna immediately undoes the positive message that the first movie ended on at an art gala thing, where, and I'm not joking, half of the exhibits are pictures of her face that her creepy friend, who totally isn't the Jacob stand-in, made.
Oh, I forgot to bring up in the first movie her creepy best friend, Javier, I think his name is. We'll just call him totally not Jacob. This f***ing guy.
In the first movie, when Anna gets blackout drunk, totally not Jacob is also there and also gets trashed. And in his stupor, and despite her saying no, he tries to have super sexy best friend time with Anna, only for the white knight known as Christian Grey comes in to save the day.
But that's not even what baffles me. What baffles me is that she's still friends with him in the next 2 movies. Why?
This is my biggest problem with Anna's character. She is constantly surrounded by the worst kind of men on Earth and is totally okay with it. Seriously, she isn't even mad at totally not Jacob. It's not even brought up again at all, because according to E.L. James, sexual assault is only bad when your boss tries to do it. And that's another thing that makes no sense. She puts up with Christian Grey constantly being an absolute piece of trash. She puts up with this loser. But when her boss, Jack Hyde, is all, "I'm Jack Hyde, and I want to jack off all over your hide," suddenly she doesn't like creepy, abusive, rapist men. Honestly, why is it okay when Christian does awful shit, but not when Jack does it? Oh right, Christian is rich and sexy. That makes everything he does okay, thus saith E.L. James. But back to my earlier point, Anna is both a terrible protagonist and a terrible role model for women. One of the first things she does in the movie is demolish the good ending of the first movie, because all it takes is one small conversation for Christian Grey to win her back. Despite all that "you're never doing that to me again" and the wailing and gnashing of teeth at the end of the first movie. And I get it. Part of Anna kind of likes the kinky stuff, so she wants more. But still, the optics and messaging here is utterly horrendous. Christian is the kind of guy you should stay away from, far away from, not give second, third, fourth, and 45th chances to. Speaking of which, Christian is somehow worse in this movie. You thought he was a walking, talking red flag before? Well, hold on to your hairpiece, because one of the very first things he does in this movie is try to introduce Anna to the woman who molested him as a child!
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
I am not joking! He wants Anna to meet the woman who taught him BDSM when he was a teenager. Oh my God! Can someone please tell Chris Hansen to stop investigating Onision for 5 seconds and look into E.L. James? Holy shit!
And no, this does not lead to the child molester that groomed Christian Grey going to jail. She does not go to jail in this movie or the next. The worst thing that happens to her is someone throws a drink in her face and someone else slaps her, and that's it. So you're telling me that abuse is okay when the guy that's doing it is rich and handsome, and assaulting a child is only mildly problematic. Thank you, E.L. James. We couldn't have done it without you.
Oh, and we also get a scene where Christian fingers Anna in a crowded elevator. Hooray. And somehow, no one in the elevator notices. Even when he loudly whispers this.
Don't come.
There is no way. There is no way that no one heard that, and there's no way that you can finger someone in a crowded elevator without everyone noticing. But because this movie's so stupid, no one notices.
No, they just all leave the elevator, it's just a normal day. They're all just... this movie. And before they go to an auction thing, he puts some sexy balls in her vagina that will make her feel good later on. And during the auction, she starts reacting to them.
You know, why did it not kick in until the auction started? They react when she sits down, right? They had to drive in a car to get to the auction. And somehow the little magic balls didn't work while they were sitting in a vibrating vehicle. This movie is so stupid. I hate it. Why is... I give up!
Just like in the previous movie, none of this shit is sexy at all. It's creepy, it's weird, it's awkward. Not once was I aroused during this entire trilogy. If the entire point of your trilogy is to arouse your audience, and I am flaccid the entire way through, you have literally failed at everything. In fact, I have never been more flaccid in my entire life.
You want to know one thing that got worse in this movie? The dialogue. I don't know how, but just roll it.
Okay, fine. I will have dinner with you. Because I'm hungry.
I was being romantic and then you just go and distract me with your kinky f***ery.
No, you're not putting those in my butt.
They don't go in your butt.
That's all I have to say to that. Just... But, again, the first 3/4 of this movie are not as bad, not anywhere near as boring as the first movie. And honestly, I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't as bad as the first movie. Until the last 20 minutes of this movie. Oh my God. I have never seen the last 20 minutes of a movie completely eviscerate everything that came before it and drag the entire thing down into the dark abyss. for some reason, this movie has an entire bonus act. Because in most movies, in most fiction, there's 3 acts. You have the beginning, you have the middle, and then you have the end. That's how most plots work. For some reason, this movie has a bonus 4th act where things just happen. And it just keeps happening. There are multiple points where if the movie just stopped, it would have made sense, but it kept going. It got to a point where I was literally screaming at my TV, "Oh my God, movie, please end." And it just kept going. Oh my God.
And yes, this is where we have the infamous helicopter scene. Basically, just at a random point near the end, Christian goes on a helicopter ride with this character who definitely has a name, and it crashes. For the next 3 or so minutes, everyone is like, "Oh my God, I hope he's okay!" And Anna is having an emotional breakdown. Suddenly, the TV behind them says, "Christian Grey has been found."
That Christian Grey and his colleague Roz Bailey have been found safe and well.
And he just walks into the room like, "Hey guys," and that's it. That's the entire scene. It just happens. And then they move on, and they don't bring it up again. What?! The quality of the script and screenplay of this movie just absolutely, positively nosedives at this last 20 minutes, and it is the funniest shit ever. This is the Room levels of absurdity. And this honestly makes me think of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, because in that movie, there's a part where Rey, quote-unquote, kills Chewbacca with Force lightning, only for 5 seconds Chewbacca to be perfectly fine. It was a fake-out. And come to think of it, in that movie as well, Kylo Ren and Rey have a weird will-they, won't-they relationship that's kind of awkward. Did J.J. Abrams just take notes from 50 Shades of Grey when writing the script for Rise of Skywalker? Because it feels like it. And I would insert a 50 Shades of Rey joke here, but I'm fairly certain that someone's already beaten me to it.
If they would have just ended this movie with Christian Grey proposing to her and her being unsure, and then they just cut to Jack Me Off Hyde just creepily smoking a cigarette outside staring at their house, then that would have been fine. You could have ended the movie right there. No need for the weird random helicopter scene for no reason. In fact, you could have put that at the beginning of the 3rd movie, and that would have made more sense, because they do explain in the 3rd movie that it was sabotage by Jack Hyde. He was trying to kill Christian Grey by sabotaging his helicopter. You could have put that in the 3rd movie, instead of it just randomly happening here at the end of this one. But no, they have him propose and her be unsure. That's the clear resolution of the movie, and you have your hook for the next movie right there, will they or won't they get married? But then the movie just continues, and she says yes after he survives the helicopter crash, and then he proposes to her again, and then you have Jack out there smoking and watching as the fireworks go off, and then the movie just ends. What? Again, this is the worst movie of the trilogy. 50 Shades Darker is so bad. It was bad for the first 3/4, but not as bad as the first. That last fourth just absolutely killed it. That last fourth is the funniest, most bizarre, infuriating movie experience I've ever had. It was comical. But yeah, so that's 50 Shades Darker, and the title did not lie. So now we're gonna move on to our final stop with this trilogy, this saga. 50 Shades Freed. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, 50 Shades Freed, it's a terrible movie, but it's the least bad of the 3 movies. It's somewhat tolerable. Kind of. Maybe. I guess.
50 Shades Freed. Okay, right off the bat, that's the dumbest title I've ever heard for a movie or a book in my life. It just doesn't sound good. Like 50 Shades of Grey, like it rolls off the tongue, and I actually like the title 50 Shades Darker. That's the best title of the three. It's everything you would want out of a sequel title. What does 50 Shades Freed mean? In what universe is Anastasia Steele free by the end of this movie? She's now trapped in a miserable marriage with this monster by the end of the movie with 2 children. In what way is she free? Maybe the title is ironic, but I don't think that E.L. James is legitimately intelligent enough to pull off that kind of irony. And right off the bat, Anna is just as dim-witted as ever. Christian wants to take her on a plane ride, and she says this.
You own this?
Anna, he's a billionaire. He has his own company named after him. And in the previous 2 movies, he took you on a helicopter ride, a plane ride, and a boat ride. Why is this still surprising you? God!
And if you think that's dumb, they have the "are we going to procreate" conversation after they get married, instead of before. Just
Phineas, sex and whips and fuck you, E.L. and fuck you, James.
And speaking of the whole pregnancy subplot in this movie, at a point Anna quips, "What, do you want me to be barefoot and pregnant?" Guess how the movie ends? With her barefoot and pregnant. Hashtag feminism.
And this is the part where I would like to point out that this trilogy was written by a woman, not a guy. You'd think it was written by a man, but it's not. It's written by a woman. I wonder how that makes the feminists feel. These are the most anti-feminist movies I've ever watched. The messaging in these movies are so terrible. Me personally, I'm not a feminist, but even I'm saying, bro, this shit is whack. And serious question to any feminists who might watch this video. Do these movies not absolutely piss you off? How is E.L. James not just absolutely despised by the feminist community? Because holy shit, these movies.
Christian is still a human shit stain in this movie, as evidenced by him legitimately getting pissed off because Anna doesn't change her email from Anastasia Steele to Anastasia Gray. Man, what an interesting and totally not at all mundane or toxic way to insert conflict into the plot. This dude is such a belligerent man-child, and I hate his guts. Oh, also, later on in the movie, he punishes her sexually because she disobeyed him. Because this is a character we're supposed to like. Oh, and when Anna does get accidentally pregnant, guess how Christian Grey responds? He gets plastered and goes and visits the woman who abused him when he was a child.
You serious?
But in all honesty, there aren't really that many lines of dialogue that stand out to me like they did in the previous movies. And at this point, I'm so numb to the stupidity of these unlikable characters that nothing phases me anymore. So as far as characters and dialogue are concerned, I've basically gone over all I need to. However, there is one area that this movie fails at that the previous 2 did not. The directing, camera work, and editing in this movie is noticeably worse. Especially during this car chase scene. I mean, look at these camera cuts. Way to take something that's supposed to be fun and action-packed and make it completely unwatchable. Also, the music in the background during this chase scene is so weird and baffling. You'd think they'd play something like this. Not shitty modern pop music.
When the wolf comes out tonight.
It is absolutely a clash of tone here that comes off as ridiculous and cartoonish. And yes, I'm painfully aware of how this entire chase scene is basically a giant commercial for Audi.
Audi. Beat women.
Also in this movie, more than the previous 2, there are so many montages in this movie of them doing mundane couple shit or having sex, or just there's so much just annoying music in this movie. Just every 10 minutes, a new popular song just starts playing, and it got to the point where I was like, oh my god, movie, shut up. It was so irritating how just abrasive the soundtrack was in this movie. It made me wish I was deaf at points.
Also, the whole subplot with Jack Hyde wanting revenge against Anna and Christian makes zero sense. The dude was a book publisher. How does he have access to explosives and state-of-the-art hacking technology? And how is he able to easily bypass Christian security? It's just very silly. And while, again, it leads to things actually happening and not just the vast, unending nothingness of the first movie, it's the most basic and generic hostage situation ever. None of this is exciting or interesting. My guess is E.L. James saw an episode or two of Criminal Minds that she really liked and went, I can do that and make it sexier!
But if I'm being completely honest, I don't really have all that much to say about 50 Shades Freed other than what I just said. That's one thing about this trilogy. It's a very repetitive trilogy. It's basically the same movie 3 times, except just with some little differences here and there, some different bells and whistles here and there. But yeah, all of the issues of 50 Shades Freed are very, very, very present in the previous 2 movies, so me bringing up those problems would just be kind of redundant. So yeah, that is the 50 Shades Trilogy. Yikes. Again, I have seen far worse, but my god, I don't know if I've seen more toxic or problematic movies in my life. Because these are very bad in that respect. Seriously, this should be a guide as far as how not to treat people in a relationship. How not to treat your significant other. In that case, it works wonders. But yeah, do not recommend. Unless, again, you have severe insomnia. In which case, I would just recommend just bash yourself in the head with a frying pan. Which I might do immediately after this so I can forget that I watched these 3 movies. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And I'm very excited about the next video like this that I'm going to do. It's going to also be movie related. And I would just go ahead and warn you. It's going to be weird. Till next time.
You're not putting those in my butt.